and welcome to On the Road to DevHops. I'm here, I'm Trace Bannon, and every once in a while I call up my friend Bryan Finster and we get together and we spar a bit. And every once in a while we add somebody else to the mix because, somebody else should be caught in the crossfire. Mr. Finster, do you want to say hello and introduce our guest?
Yeah, well, I'm Bryan Finster. I'm a developer. So this is Brian Chambers, who's hanging out with us from Chick-fil-A today. We're going to talk a little bit about platforms, I think, which is one of my favorite topics. So Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Yeah, I work for Chick-fil-A, and I am in charge of the enterprise architecture practice there, which includes all kinds of different things from more on the businessy side, but also technology architecture as well. So what we do from a platform direction, what we do, how we got to cloud, on and on and on, lots of fun tech stuff. So I've been doing that for quite a while. I've been at Chick-fil-A for about 19 years, and yeah, looking forward to digging in and chatting with you guys tonight. It'll be a lot of fun.
Well, so we always start with asking, we kind of virtually belly up to the bar, and it doesn't matter what you're drinking, but what are you drinking tonight?
Yeah, I'm boring this time. I've got water.
Well, so in honor of my friends from Chick-fil-A, this is in fact seltzer. So the unspiked variety. Now we do have our rogue, Bryan Finster. Bryan, what kind of hoity-toity thing you got going tonight?
So I'm meeting up with a bunch of fellow unicorns for later this week, and we have a bourbon club at work. And so I'm having one of those, which I acquired yesterday, which is a Rocktown chocolate malt bourbon from Little Rock, Arkansas, just about 3 hours south of me. It's quite tasty.
Well, it sounds interesting. I still say all of that bourbony, whiskey, stuffy stuff that you drink is just hoity-toity. Like my pandemic drink of choice did become seltzers with spiked. So the White Claw, because I could walk to the local grocery store and buy one can. So that was my control mechanism. So now, Brian Chambers, when you came out and you said you are an enterprise architect, I want to poke fun at you right away, but bear in mind, I'm poking fun at you.
Please.
I live in a world where enterprise architecture is now thought of as those boxes and lines guys, the ones who can't do anything. They just draw pretty pictures, and they don't even draw it in a good tool. They use like PowerPoint. What is enterprise architecture like for you at Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm sure the reality is that it's a mix of some of those things that you like to poke fun at. And so we'll certainly accept those jabs. Hopefully there is value in some of those activities. We could talk about it, but it's some fun things as well. So for me and for my team, I'll just say we have like kind of two practices that we run. The first one is what we call business architecture. And it's not really about the technology as much as it is about understanding what we're doing as a business today, where we are, where we want to get to, and then figuring out like what's the plan to make that happen. So it's really helping the business leaders think about opportunities to use technology, which without that, to be honest, we probably wouldn't build a lot of software, right? So like that leads into the second part, which is how do we build software in a way that works really great? And in our company, architecture was actually the team that launched us into doing like a DevOps, a product team approach to delivery. And as we got better at that, we let go of way more control over a lot of the decisions about how things get built, because we think that's probably better off closer to the people who are working on the problem. Like they can probably make better decisions and we can give advice and ideas from our experiences. But yeah, we launched things like that. We helped us adopt cloud, which took thinking outside of just a single product for us. We helped do what we did with edge computing. We actually launched that from our team. A lot of people have probably read our blog posts about that. So things like that are things that they don't serve a single team, much like platforms, which I know we're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. And so I think you need people who look at technology and look at opportunity in a way that's bigger than just the product that they work on, which I think is what you want a software engineer to probably be mostly doing, right? Mm-hmm. At least in my experience. So you want to be heads down and focus on what's going on and just heads up enough to know how you fit the bigger picture. You don't necessarily want to have all those relationships and crossovers between all the other things that exist in a larger business or an enterprise. So that's kind of the way that we do it at Chick-fil-A. And we tend to launch things and then let go of them, at some point and move on to whatever the next big challenge is. So
all right, Brian, you got to go with me here, Brian Chambers. We got to do like the virtual high five, because whoosh, that is what I think of when it comes to being an enterprise architect, having big vision, going out and decentralizing control, decentralizing as much as you can, but maintaining a pulse of things. So it sounds like you're doing what I would do.
You-
Can't
you
say
know,
it's always that way, but
You touched on something that is, it's distressing how many people I run into who believe that the point is the development. Instead of the point is, like helping the business operate better. It's really the whole point, It's like if you don't understand that, you
No.
just kind of get lost.
Finster, you're wrong. It's software for software's sake. That's why we went and got all these certifications. That's why we spend our evenings and weekends coding. Hello.
Because the purity of the code is really all that matters.
Yeah.
Or as long as you use the cool tool, right? As long as you're
Exactly.
using Kubernetes is probably not the coolest thing out there anymore, but as
No,
long as
Kubernetes is like
whatever.
old hat. That's if you're using Kubernetes, you're probably like old,
like an enterprise architect.
No, but I mean, it's important though, right? I mean, that if you're not tying directly to what it is we're trying to accomplish, which is, helping somebody do something better versus, internalizing, look how cool I am because I can play with computers all day. Nobody cares.
Right.
That's a beautiful segue into talking about platform because
It is. And let me pontificate on this.
Oh Lordy, where's my mute button? I don't have a mute button for you, Finster.
I'm right in the middle of, well, I'm waiting for Leah from IT Revolution to do copy editing on my paper on platform. And also, I'm waiting for Dana also to inject one thing about community. But it's this, I see the same thing happening in platforms sometimes where it's like, you'll create this platform organization and they'll start going, hey, look at all this whiz-bangy cool thing we built. Yeah, but nobody cares because it's not helping the development teams to deliver to the business better, right? It's like, why don't you go and find out what the real problems are and then solve those?
Well, let's step back a sec. So both of these things, right? We're talking about enterprise architecture and sliding into talking about platforms more specifically.
Yeah.
What I heard Mr. Chambers say is you've got to be able to bring value, and how you define value varies, right? But in business, in commercial, it is absolutely about dollar signs. It is absolutely about market value. Ultimately, the capabilities that you provide lead back to, right, full good business return. Now, some of the stuff that you and I do now, Mr. Finster, is on with the government, and it's not always about the dollars, but there is value defined in different ways. But what I find really intriguing about what you both said is tracking back to making things easier for people to deliver value, right? So at the end of the day, it's about delivering value. So I want to get after a conversation here on platforms by starting with define a platform. What's a platform?
So Bryan, you go, and then I'll go.
Oh, so you get to critique my answer. I see.
Exactly.
No,
Exactly.
you know what? I'll go, and you can tell me where I'm wrong, right?
It's all good either way. I can go. Well, I mean, not to be snarky about it, but I think it's something that you are able to build on top of, and it's a foundation, right? And it could be, I mean, to Bryan's point, it could be a good foundation that takes care of a lot of things, that makes life a lot easier, that makes creating value a lot quicker, that makes the developer's experience better, on and on and on, right? And we'll probably talk about those things, but it could be platform that is just about, doing something, applying technology to something. And if it's not ultimately making people's lives better, I think that's really the big question. It's true of what you just said about value. It's like value doesn't have to be dollars. It could just be about the experiences of people, which actually Chick-fil-A is private, and we're much more centered on creating value and having positive influence on people than we are about the dollar signs. We're a business, so the dollar signs matter. But I think that's true with platforms too. Like, can you make great experiences for people, and can you make the business go better by taking care of a lot of things that might be their concerns otherwise, and make their lives easier, make the right things to do, the easy things to do, and on and on. Yeah. Bryan, what do you think?
No, well, I was going to circle back to something that Tracy said, is platforms, a platform is something that makes it easier for other people to do their job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. And I absolutely agree with everything you said. So we're not going to have much disagreement. I mean, really,
hold on. I'll interject something. Is it? Okay.
No, I think it's super important, that whole concept of, look, we want it to be the best experience possible for the people doing work, because if they're happy and they don't have a lot of friction in their lives, then instead of fighting to just do something, they can focus on doing something. and the amount of friction that you can impose by doing things like taking too much control as a platform or taking too little control as a platform. Both of those can cause tremendous friction that make it so the teams are focusing on the tools instead of using the tools to do something.
100%
I like to say
agree.
that they need to enable you without disabling you, right? You
Yes.
don't want to hamstring a team. You want to enable them. And how far you have to go depends on the type of work you're doing, the type of challenges within your context. And actually, it also depends on the skill set of your developers. If you have a more junior team, I might want and need to codify a little bit more. I may choose to be more prescriptive, right? To have more opinionated framework. It depends. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer.
I'm gonna disagree, and I'll tell you why.
Because you always do.
Because I tend to be contrarian. But no, I want something to use personally that's easy enough for a junior developer to use. Right. And there's ways to do that where your baseline configuration is both easy to use and doesn't take a lot of extension, but extensible for people who need to be power users for edge cases. Right. I've lived that environment. It's wonderful. But the baseline configuration was so easy that even I could use it. And I don't want to say, oh, look, I'm good enough and my team is mature enough that we can have more complicated tools. I don't want more complicated tools. I just want to do my job.
I'm not implying that you have more than one platform necessarily. No, depending on the
No,
size of your organization. I just mean,
no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying
you're in
more than
charge
one
of the platform, but if you're in charge of designing the platform,
yeah,
you're going to have to make some fundamental decisions up front. And some of that may be a sliding scale of the amount of capabilities that you want built in at first. You may be rolling out new capabilities. I'm just saying that it's never one size fits all unless you're buying it.
I would hesitate to say that you base it on like the maturity of teams. That's a terrible way to approach it.
Nope, I didn't say maturity of teams. I didn't say that. I said skill set. There's difference.
Well, I would hesitate to base it on the skill set of the developers that are using the platform, right? Just respect people's intelligence. Make it so it's hard to do the wrong things, make it easy to do the right things, like Bryan said, right? And respect the intelligence of if you take it from the point of view of like, look, we have low skill developers. We need to build a platform to support it. That's so patronizing, so paternalistic, and will wind up with a terrible platform.
So I'm going to put a pin in this, but we're going to come back to the concept of low code, no code, because low code, no code platforms are converging with these developer platforms that we're all creating. So there's a convergence of these things. And some of it is democratizing so that I don't have to have a computer science degree, or I don't have to be a software engineer by training in order to be able to bring value as a citizen developer. So pin in that. And I want to come back to the experience, right? The experience of the developers. I've heard both of you say, you got to make it easier for them. Tell me about some of the qualities of a good platform. What are some of the things that you consider?
Yeah, I mean, I think what decisions can you make once and for all, kind of the one decision that makes 100 decisions type idea. What are the force multiplying things that you can do? And I agree that you want to preserve some degree of autonomy so that you're not like forcing such highly opinionated approaches that people have no creative freedom and maybe actually can't even solve a problem. Like we way back used to use a lot of the commercial off the shelf, like integration middleware tools. What I found about those, they took care of a lot. They were a platform, but you couldn't even Google for the answers to how to solve an error like that you ran across, right? So opinionated, so specific that you were handcuffed. So you can't do that. But I don't think you want, our platform is AWS, right? So what's that middle that makes sense where you can kind of make some decisions? They're going to make a much simpler world for developers, a lot less things for them to have to think about, and they get some other benefits, like they can focus more on their app instead of all those concerns. Maybe it's monitoring and metrics and things like that. Overall, though, I think it's really just like, can you reduce like the cognitive load, the number of things that people have to balance in their brain at any time in order to successfully do their job? And I'd say we learned a lot from this. I mentioned the DevOps product model that we launched. Doing that and asking people like to run their own Amazon infrastructure and patch it, maintain it, and keep it up to date and figure out how they're going to monitor their app and do that and respond to alerts and be on call and set up rotations and it's pretty taxing. And we found a lot of our guys just didn't have time to really like build their app. They're doing all the other stuff. So can you force multiply and do that one time for many so they can focus on the things that add the most value? So that's kind of what I think.
Well, there's also another customer of the platform that people often forget about, and that's the enterprise. So for example, I spent a lot of time in Walmart platform, and there were several things we did about adding abstraction layers above the underlying tools. And I talked to Andrew Schaefer about this, and he had this great diagram that showed like infrastructure and then like tools and then like, and then it had, applications. But we had an abstraction layer above the tools so that we could just replace tools or even move you to entirely different environments, and you would have no developer experience change whatsoever. Right? It was all about, you don't need to know that you're in Azure GPC or in an Edge Kubernetes cluster somewhere. You don't need to know that. We'll put you where you need to be. And we might want to replace the engine behind CI. You won't know. Because we were planning for some of those things. We had some tools we put in place. It's like, we're going to use this tool. We don't like it. It probably won't scale, but we need to start someplace. So we'll get going and then we'll replace the tool.
This reminds me of, we didn't call it platform about 15 years ago. We called them frameworks at that point, right? We had a different term for them. Similar, they've evolved and become now that what we're calling platform, right? Providing, I used to call it the plumbing, making sure that my cross-cutting concerns were being dealt with the same way by the entire team. So there was a predictability. It didn't mean that I didn't educate people on what was going on under the covers though. So one of the things I'd be interested to hear from both of you is, in your platform work, yes, you want to make it so it is a seamless experience, as seamless as possible, as enabling as possible. But how much do you educate folks about what's happening in the platform itself, right? Because I have found, my experience was that I had a couple of teams where they were clueless about what was happening, and it also meant that when there were issues, there had to be a lot more injection of external help into that. So how do you balance that? So I'd be interested to hear, I'll pick on you, Mr. Chambers, because you're at the bottom of my screen. Why don't you start? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's something that I wrestle with still on where the sweet spot is. Like, let's just use what we're doing from a application platform perspective internally, which is Kubernetes. And Kubernetes isn't a platform. I'll say that first. It is a primitive you can build a platform on top of. And sorry, Kubernetes people, but it's just not.
That's heresy. That's heresy.
Scheduling tool. Kubernetes people will tell you that it's a scheduling tool.
Yeah, and I love it, but it's not a platform, right? But let's use that as an example, because people who deploy things into it, how much should they have to know? Like, should they even know that it exists? Should they know like how to write a good health check for their application? And that's it. Should they be able to ever connect into Kubernetes? Like, what is the right level of abstraction from it? And I mean, I think there's probably like an ideal answer, but that probably requires, like, for us, more resources than we actually have. So we're like fighting that little battle of like, how deep do you go? How much do you abstract? What's the right spot? I'm curious your experience from Walmart, Bryan. Maybe I'll have some more to add, but it's one that I don't have the answer to, that we're wrestling with pretty actively right now.
So there was a blog post recently, or not, it was a news release or something, an article. That's what I'm looking for. There was an article recently about Walmart Cloud Native Platform. Okay. And that's Walmart's Kubernetes offering. There's multiple ways to integrate with WCNP or to interact with it. But the way they really want you to interact with it is give us code and we'll deploy it. And you don't even know it's Kubernetes. So it's like, you don't even have to write a Docker file. As long as you're using one of the standard stacks, it'll go and containerize it for you, build an optimized container, deploy it to a Kubernetes cluster wherever it needs to go, give you information about it. Will automatically wire in logging, monitoring, alerting. You've got an API you have to meet on the configuration for, this is my health check endpoint, this is my heartbeat, and you can configure some things around environment specific variables, that sort of thing, right? but you don't have to know anything about Kubernetes to get it done. If
I'm wrestling with that, guys.
well,
Got to interject. I'm wrestling.
but
Somebody's got to know something, and it can't be the ivory tower over here or the platform team that doesn't have a lot of availability. Like we're to Bryan
but who
Chambers'
says the
point.
platform team doesn't have a lot of availability, right? So
I
they
don't
do
know.
everything they can to make it easy to make it so no one will talk to them. Okay, because if people are talking to you, it costs money, right? You want to keep the operational costs low by making it easy to be self-service. That means self-operable, but you don't want to put it in a situation where they have to know the deep intricacies of Kubernetes to get it done. So there's notation out there about how to go hit kubectl and look at some logs from kubectl, right? But you already have Splunk, you already have whatever app monitoring tool they're using, right? And you're supposed to be publishing logs anyway. You shouldn't have to be looking at the Kubernetes clusters unless there's a problem with the cluster, in which case it's the platform team's problem. Raise an issue on Slack and they will jump on it because that's what they do.
I'm smirking because I'm going to poke at you, Bryan Finster.
Yeah.
You know what I heard you just say?
What's that?
It depends. You just didn't use those words. It depends. It does. It depends. There's no magic formula. Well, there's not. Hold on. There's not a single answer. Is all I'm trying to drive to. Is it's not a single answer. That's why there's a Bryan Chambers.
Well,
that's why there's a Trace Bannon. That's why there's a Bryan Finster.
Hang on. Let me clarify.
Oh.
If you're an effective platform, you're going to minimize onboarding time and make people as productive as they can be as fast as they can be productive, which means you don't want them to have to go and learn a whole bunch of stuff about your particular platform that's like special and edge casey, right? And so like onboarding time for WCMP is like, watch this video. Here's an example configuration file for Java. Go.
And when something goes wrong, got to call somebody else because you don't know enough because you just did the code over here and then pushed it out in the magic button over there.
So when something goes wrong as an edge case, it's not happening all the time. Do you want to educate everybody on the deep intricacies of how to do that diagnosis? Or do you want to have an effective support process where they can get rapid help when they get stuck?
Well, so we're in complete agreement, but our words are different. It depends on what your organization wants and needs. All of those goals are beautiful goals, and how you define rapid onboarding, how you define the ability to have self-help, how you define what your operating model looks like so that when there is an issue that people can rally around it, is going to be different from organization to organization. So we at least have to agree that it's going to depend on from that perspective. But hold on. We're not letting Bryan Chambers talk. He's like smiling at us while we argue.
Well, that's because arguing is fun. But I think it probably, just one more little anecdote, is I think it probably also just depends on what your organization has the capacity to do and what it can do right now. Like I think what Bryan described is aspirational for us, and we'd love to do it really well. But if you do it like kind of well, I think you get the worst of both worlds. And if you do it really well or don't do it at all, well, if you do it really well, you get the best. If you don't do it at all, you get the free for all, which is probably bad. So like, I think you aspire towards what Bryan described, but the reality is it may take time to get there, and you don't want to force it on people if you can't execute in a way where it's simple, because then you're back to, you need help. You can't Google for answers. You can't find what you need. You might know Kubernetes really well, but they won't let you do anything with it. All of those pain points. So I think doing it well and having the capacity to do it well is probably one of the
keys. So let me talk a little bit about scale so we can all understand the scale of the operation, because I've got this all written down and I think it's awesome. L1 support globally, that was spread across the globe for Follow the Sun. L1 support was 8 people, and the team responsible for the Kubernetes offering was smaller than that. So they would have been L2. Now, that platform was built upon the rest of the tools in the pipeline. And so the total staffing was about 80 people. But if you're having problems with Kubernetes, you're either going to talk to L1 support or the WCMP team, and that's not very many people. And it was being pushed as the way to deliver. I don't know what percentage of workflows went through it when I left, because it only been out in GA for a little over a year. But the one thing we did really well was we had really good documentation. We had really good training videos. We had a massive documentation and training team that at the maximum got to 2 people.
Wait a minute, you gave them training stuff?
It's retail, man.
I thought so. I'm gonna poke you, but then I'm gonna let this one go because not worth it. You said you weren't going to spend a lot of time training people and stuff that they don't need. So it must have been interesting as the platform architect or platform engineer to strike that balance, which is why we have Bryans and Bryans, right? To strike the balance between what gets codified, what gets trained. So, just want to call you out there that you were educating people. It wasn't as though you just sit them down, they get a 5-minute video and they're just off to the races in production.
No, I'm saying that WCMP didn't take a lot of knowledge, right? If you weren't using WCMP, if you had builds using the tools that underlie think of WCMP as the ultimate abstraction layer. Okay. But if you weren't delivering to Kubernetes, the next layer down was where you could deliver anywhere else. And it was more complicated to do, and it took more information to get it done because it was less opinionated. So as you become less opinionated, it becomes more complicated for people to do things, right? And there was a less opinionated way to use WCMP as well. And it took more, here's the documentation for that, because that takes more work, right? But it's giving people the option to trade off between easy and flexible. Right. But also doing it in a way where you're not making them wait on a ticket to answer any questions and not having to build a giant support organization. I think striking that balance of getting good information out in consumable ways. Anyway,
striking the balance.
Keep going, but I'll just read the paper.
Striking the balance is not easy, which is why we have folks who are in technical lead roles, because they're trying to help people figure out how to strike that balance. So I'm just going to celebrate the fact that we're here having this discussion because it's not easy. It isn't. If it were easy, everybody'd be doing it. If it were easy, then Bryan Chambers wouldn't say, well, I've got some more things to do to get it even better.
I do have a hint for everybody though, because this was a major win that we actually didn't plan on from the beginning. Is before the platform started, there's somebody you may have heard of, Dana Finster. You've heard of Dana?
Are you asking Bryan or me? Of course I have. I text her. I mean, she's my friend. Yeah. I like her better than you, Bryan. Not you, Chambers, the other Bryan.
I don't know personally.
No, so Dana sponsored, she organized a DevOps day. And then at the end of it, she said, we're going to start a community focused on continuous delivery so we can keep the conversation going instead of waiting until the next DevOps day. And and that community was starting at the same time they were just starting to pilot some of the first capabilities on the platform. And so that community grew with the platform. And by the time, we were getting big and covering a majority of the organization, if you're in one of the platform help channels on Slack, there'd be many times when somebody who was actually working in platform wouldn't have an opportunity to answer a question because somebody from the broader community or one of our passionate advocating users would jump in and answer the question just to be helpful. And of course we encourage that. So, hey, thanks for jumping in. That was awesome.
So I want to celebrate that. And then I want to pivot. So yes, I adore Dana Finster. You should meet her, Bryan. Like she's better than the other Finster. Just put it out there.
It's true. She's the smarter. She's the smarter.
So let's talk about platforms. Let's talk about driving towards platform when you're first going down that pathway in the first place, getting adoption, bringing your developers in to be a part of the design, whether you bring them in to be a part of the discussion about what platform should and shouldn't be. You've been doing this for a while. Bryan Chambers, tell me a little bit about your journey on helping Chick-fil-A to adopt platform. Right. And so what are some of the landmines that you've hit on or anything where you'd say, gotta do this, gang?
Well, I may have already alluded to one, which is, I think if you try to make a platform and try and get people to adopt it and use it, but you have forced opinionation, but haven't completed doing it extraordinarily well, you've stepped on a landmine and you've both, set people back because they've probably been counting on what you're doing and they haven't been doing something else. So they've been trying to use your platform and it's not going well. So you've cost them a bunch of time. You've wasted, wasted a bunch of energy, but you might have also lost some credibility in terms of getting people to come back in the future, which I think is a challenge as well. Go ahead.
You're muted.
I wasn't sure if we were going to say that or not. Just let her go.
No, just let me go. I could just wave my hands and things. So in that case, I think you've made a good point that you could lose credibility.
Mhm.
On the other side of that, I've seen it where it has built credibility in terms of collaborating together. If the agreement is there up front that you're our beta, you're working with us, are you willing to be that adopter, and getting that corporate buy-in or getting that agency or department level buy-in on it? Have you dealt with that situation, Bryan?
Yeah, I think we've done it both ways. The way I described, it's a landmine, and then we've done it more recently with like early beta partners and trying to be really intentional about understanding what they want and need, but also like being very attentive to what they're feeling as they go through the inevitable, rocky parts of the early stage of adopting. So
yeah, and I think it's more than just being a beta, right? I wouldn't even call it a beta, right? It's that we're trying to find those teams that both have a common problem we need to solve for the broader organization, and are also excited about being part of the solution for that they're already advocates for what you're doing because they've looked at your vision and they believe in it. And then it's partnering with them and working with them closely every single day on as you solve the problem, and being incredibly responsive when things go wrong, and building that teamwork between the platform team and the team that you're working with to solve that problem, right? And then you've got this team where you've got a successful case study, you've got built-in advocates because of how awesome the customer service was, and grow from there. You just keep doing that as you have, like, I have this new big problem we haven't solved yet. What team will help me with that? And then bring them all into the community. Treat them as if they matter.
That's been my experience, is making sure people know that their voices are being heard. It doesn't mean that they get complete and total autonomy. That's, just a wonderful debate and discussion. Bryan, Finster, you and I have had that before about, where does autonomy start and stop? But you can hear somebody without them having complete and full decision-making over everything that they do. So there's a nice dichotomy. Oops, I say as I hit that, there's a nice dichotomy that happens. And there is that trust building that has to exist, right? A platform team that doesn't get to know the teams that are leveraging that capability, that platform as a product, that lack of trust means that when there is a problem, it's a negative experience in terms of, instead of coming to you and saying, I've got a problem, let's work it through together, right? There becomes this friction that doesn't need to be there. So
I think a lot of the tension with platforms might come when you're trying to build a platform to do something that people already feel like they have an easy way to do themselves without your platform.
Okay.
And I was thinking about the one I mentioned earlier that Chick-fil-A is kind of known for from an edge computing platform perspective, which is kind of both an infrastructure all the way up to application, deployment platform.
Mm-hmm.
That one was really easy to get adoption because there literally was no other option other than you ship your own infrastructure to every restaurant and support it, all the things, right? Like nobody can do that because there's no physical space for it. So it wasn't an option. So that was like exponentially enabling because there was no other option. It was the way, and it did a good job of listening to its early customers and tried to empathize with what they were looking to do, and and build features accordingly, and ultimately was pretty successful. I think doing like I told you about our sort of DevOps journey where we started with people kind of having autonomy within a cloud environment. A lot of people feel like they can be pretty successful, I think, on their teams. They have a good team with like good operational skills. They probably feel like they can be pretty successful without a platform. So like the hiccups you hit and the mines you hit with a platform feel even bigger to them, I think, because they're like, we don't even need this. Like, why are we going through this trouble? We could just do this on our own. And I think that's probably a challenge in mindset that you have to overcome. Again, like, I hate that the answer is like, do it well, but it feels like if you try and get people to adopt something you're not doing well, you're going to run into that every time.
So we had a strategy for that.
Strategy for not doing things well? That sounds like Finsterism.
No,
I've never heard one.
Doing things well doesn't matter if if your tools have to be like several orders of magnitude better than the ones they already have currently in place.
Oh, agreed.
Right. So it's not enough to do it well. Right. But if you have this goal of we need to consolidate around this one platform for many, many reasons, and it's not just we want to make developers' lives better. That's not the only reason. We want to make it harder for them to make security mistakes. We want them to make it harder for them to make SOX violations. We want to make it harder for them to accidentally deploy something when we desperately don't want them to deploy. There's all these things that we want. And so that we had a kind of a multi-tiered strategy. One was we want our platform to be easier than what they currently have today. That's baseline. We want it to be better.
Yeah.
Right. And we were going to sell and show them why it was easier and better. But also we were going to have delivery metrics baked in, and the CTO was asking for delivery metrics from every team so that because we were using those as a lever towards, hey, why can't we CD? Basically. And CD was, fix all the reasons why we can't CD. And some of those, technical, organizational, whatever. There's lots of reasons. That's a whole other talk. But we also had the security baked in, we had compliance baked in, and our attitude was like, hey, look, you can use any platform as you want, but you have to have all of these things put together, and you have to interface with the delivery metrics so that we can publish delivery metrics. Just use whatever you want. And then there's one other piece to it, though, right? Was the expand and contract. I call it the amoeba strategy. Hey, Mr. VP, Mrs. VP, you've got all these Jenkins instances running. We have a lot of expertise in operating Jenkins. Why don't you let us run those for you? Right? And then we go work with those teams and give them the sales pitch and start migrating them over to our platform. But there's always some laggards where it's like, look, I have my thing and I like it. And so we offered to give the Jenkins operations back to those VPs along with the budget, because we started paying for their Jenkins instances. They stopped paying for them. And now we're going to give them to you back, and you have to pay for them again. And suddenly those teams were incentivized to move. So magician's force, yeah, but you got to get, handle the laggards somehow, and you don't want to just fire them.
Well, I want to come back to something that Mr. Chambers mentioned, and that is you want to give them something that's better than what they're currently doing. And some people think that they have a really slick way of doing something. How have you dealt with that? Because I know there are times where I'm like, my teams have done some pretty cool things, put some stuff together, and they'd still benefit from an enterprise grade platform, but we're doing this okay. What's the incentivization there? More than going above their heads to the VPs, Bryan Finster. How did you work through that, Mr. Chambers?
Well, I think we're still working through those kinds of things, but I think it's similar to what Bryan said, not to fire them or send their stuff back to the VPs.
Well, but it's the idea, right, of you want to make sure that everybody has the same level, the same security profile, that everybody has the same level of compliance, right? There's some non-negotiables that should be level across every single team. And if it's happening in a single platform, then audit has one place to look. If it's happening on all of these other ways of delivering, then all of those people have to prove that they're compliant, or we're just pretending and just letting it slide because we don't care.
I think one strategy is you just continue to allow autonomy, which is the part that was similar to what Bryan mentioned. Let them keep doing what they're doing if they like it, but also with that autonomy has to come the accountability to check the boxes for the things that are important and that ultimately matter. And that's going to be the things that you are, hopefully, if you're doing it better than what they're doing, going to be baked into your platform, and those come for free by giving up a little bit of autonomy. I guess it's not free, almost free.
If you can do these things, hit these metrics,
right.
These are the standards that we need. These are the other capabilities that we need. This is what needs to be codified. If you can hit all of these things and show me that in an auditable way that everybody can get after, okay.
Enjoy.
Most teams I've experienced take a step back and go, well, we can do that, but it's
as we thought to keep using our thing.
Or their team starts to realize they can do it, but what's the point of diminishing returns? They don't, if there's something there that provides it to them, my experience has been that they kind of come up with a reason that, not swallow their pride, because that really has the wrong mental model for it. But there's a point where people look at things and go, yeah, I guess, you know what? We should make this change here. And the teams themselves begin to justify it. When your teams start to justify why they would move to a platform from their tools, when they become an advocate for adoption, that's the high five moment, right?
Well,
Wolverines.
you built trust at that point, right? I think
Yeah,
that might be what it actually is. Like if somebody has thought about something a lot and put a lot of effort into it, and you see it and it's checking all the boxes you're being asked to check, that kind of, when you look over there and you're like, oh, they've done it and I can just use it, like that builds a little bit of trust. They've actually thought about all these things. They've done this well too. I may think I did it well, but I can see that they did it well. And so, maybe I just want to get back to working on my application or the thing that I'm doing that adds value, and just be like, okay, cool. They've got it, and I can trust that they're going to handle other problems for me.
Yeah, imagine that conversation. It's like, hey, with the business, like, hey, why can't we get this feature out? Oh, because we're working on, this other thing because we don't want to change platforms.
We're patching our infrastructure, right?
Yeah. We're adding in the security scanning, and we bought our own license for it because we don't want to change to the central platform.
I have found that when you make tools easily available, when you take down all of the licensing challenges that people run into, those simple things, people start to look at because budget matters as much as any developer goes, no, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, it starts to matter after a while, even to the general developer goes, yeah, I guess I don't need that $100,000 license. I could probably do it with this other piece. You're right. It becomes self-evident. And it is up to that platform organization to be able to provide quality, right? And they need to be transparent. If they're having problems, they need to be able to say, here's how we're dealing with that. Here's how we've prioritized. We've heard you. Here's what we're doing, right? Enlist to get help.
This is something else that I think is super important, is especially if you're trying to use platform as one of the levers for we're going to be a DevOps organization, right? Is you need to exemplify the culture, right? So for example, there's the main orchestration engine for Walmart's platform is Concord. It's concord.walmartlabs.com. It's been open sourced. It's a really nifty widgety tool. If Concord went down, all the pipelines went down, right? If there was an issue, you were taking down all the pipelines, and that's several thousand teams. If there was an issue in Concord, they would broadcast to all of the platform Slack channels, because there was one per product, and then the main channel for the platform. That with red light flashing icons, there's an issue with Concord. Next update will be happening at this time. And they would give frequent updates with what they knew so far, and then and when they were done, they say, hey, we've resolved it. And you can expect the postmortem to be published by this date. And then they would go and do a postmortem. They publish the postmortem, and just full transparency. Here's everything went wrong. Here's the lesson. There's the timeline of what happened. Here's the lessons learned and what our takeaways were.
Model the behaviors
Model
that you
the
want,
behavior
that you want to see in others.
And if you're building a CD platform, by God, you better be delivering it with continuous delivery.
No, wait, I deliver my platform twice a year. We have these major releases. Come on, dude.
You better be delivering with continuous delivery. And you know what? Use your platform to deliver your platform. Eat your own dog food.
So I'm going to ask a question. I want to pivot just a tiny little bit. This is a question that Mr. Finster, you and I have sparred just a little bit about, but we tabled it until we got Mr. Chambers here.
Mm-hmm.
Is a platform a product?
Recently had my mind changed about this, but go ahead, Bryan.
All right. Yeah, I'm curious to hear what you guys think. I think yes, because a product has customers who want to consume it either for money or for free, preferably for free, I guess. But and hopefully a platform has all the things that a product, at least a software product, has, even a physical product, I guess, like a roadmap and an iterative approach to being delivered based on feedback from its customers, and maybe a product owner even who is really focused on that stuff, really understands where it is, but instead of building every single day, all day long, maybe they're also very customer focused. So yeah, I think it is. What do you guys think?
I need a little like a little button that makes like little, I don't know, confetti come down
Sparkles.
or balloons go up. Yes, sparkles. So what you're saying aligns with what I've sparred with Mr. Finster about, but it sounds like he may have pivoted, but I'll be interested to hear if he pivoted. I think that platform can be a product. It's true that your immediate customers are the development teams or the delivery teams. That's your immediate customer. I'd also say that you are directly impacting the ultimate customer as well. So I believe that you are a product. You are a product. So Finster, where you at?
So I've been pushing platform as a product because platforms should be treated as if they're good products.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to Andrew Schaefer about this, and he disagreed vociferously with me that platforms being a product. He said, because if you have a good product, it makes you money. And a platform, the best you can hope for is it's cost neutral, right? And usually they cost you money, but the best you can hope for is that you save enough money that it pays for the platform, right? And but when we started talking through it, right, it wasn't that. It's not that we should push it's a product, because, and he pointed this out too, most companies get their products wrong, right? It's that you should have the same empathy for the end user, understanding what their problems are, being responsive to them as if you were a good product. So it's, you know, it's platform as a product is shorthand for understand your user and their pain, take them seriously, don't treat them like children, be empathetic for their problems, learn what struggles they're having with your platform, find out how to make it easier for them, you know, be the product you'd want to use.
I'm going to tie a bow on this because it sounds like we're all in agreement. Is a product. Would the end business necessarily agree with us? And we might debate back and forth, but it is absolutely a complete and total enabler if we're doing it right. Bryan Finster, you made an interesting comment, and I think Mr. Chambers, it kind of made, I saw your eyebrow kind of go up like, most companies get their products wrong, was the quote. Mr. Finster, what do you mean that most companies get their products wrong? You mean the definition of their products or the delivery of their products?
Yeah, sure. I mean, they build products that are kind of meh. You know, how often have you, how many, what would you say the percentage of I got awesome customer support versus wow, you really suck, Comcast, or theoretically, hypothetically, right? So, or, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing that I have compared to all the other competing things, right?
I can see that. There are definitely experiences. Remember, I'm dev married to ops, and there are definitely experiences where I hang up on the phone or the bridge or whatever it was, and I dial up ops. I'm like, they actually knew what they were talking about. Well, they actually were able to help me the first time around, right? So
let me give you a specific example from something that's not support. It's the actual product itself.
Okay.
That would be the 2017 MacBook Pro.
Okay.
So what they did was they built a machine that disrespected me both as a photographer and as a software engineer.
Okay.
They built a machine, and this is something that Brian Kroger, he came up with this great thing, which was SADX, right? So SADX is the system administration experience. So instead of DevX, it's SADX, right? And they built a machine that was easy for them to build. They took away all my ports. They took away my escape key. They put this stupid bar that has a changing user experience all the time at the top. They put a crappy keyboard on it that didn't have any good feel. And then they proudly sold it for thousands of dollars. So was that doing product well? Or was that doing, what do we want to do well?
So I would split the difference by saying, many companies get
Yeah.
their products wrong. I would not say most, otherwise we wouldn't have some of these wild breakaway
Well,
successes. And I think there are. I think
I
there
think
are.
you'd have to know Andrew, and also the fact that he and I seem to have similar levels of cynicism.
All right. I don't know if I could take two cynical people like you, Bryan, at the same
Andrew's
time. Like, I
Such a
met Bryan,
fan.
yeah, or
I'm
met
such a fan of Andrew.
met Andrew online before. Yeah, we'll have to debate that one because I don't know if I could take two Finsters at a time.
We should just ask him to come on and you can find out.
Well, then that'll be the night that I actually have that glass filled up with something. So, gosh, there's so much to talk about with this. Let's see. We've talked about product as a platform as a product. We've talked about empathy and sympathy and the developer experience and who are we really trying to help?
There's one other thing I want to touch on.
Yeah. What is that?
The idea that if all we do is bring in a good platform, then everything else will get better.
Well, yeah, DevOps, cloud, agile, platform. You're going to be 20 pounds lighter. You're going to be 6 inches taller and have $100 in your pocket. Bang.
Exactly so. And that's just not true. I mean, you can have a really good platform and people will just keep doing that. They will just have a new way to do the same old bad thing they were doing before.
It is behavior
You have to have like a
modification.
holistic strategy. If you want to make delivery better in your organization, you need a holistic strategy. Platform is key to that because it can be a major force enabler. If you do it well, it's always a major force enabler. It's just sometimes it's a force for evil. Hopefully it's a force for good, right? But it can't be a standalone silver bullet solution. It's got to be part of a broader strategy that includes like engaging people and and like the executive like alignment, trying to align through the organization. It requires everything to change if you want to.
That's why I was really happy that Bryan Chambers actually owned the title enterprise architect, because so many people there is for another day, Bryan, or over different circumstances, we'll have to talk about what's happening with the term enterprise architecture, right? It's swung, TOGAF, DODAF kind of bastardized it, made it something that was ivory towered and not connected and not helpful for anybody. But what Bryan Finster is talking about, having a strategy. Development team is generally going to be worried about delivering on that feature capability or that new product. They're not going to be looking at the whole enchilada. So is DevOps adoption the right thing for us at this time? How are we going to get there? Will platform enable us? Do I need mentors? Do I need coaches? How are we going to experiment together? Right? And all of that tied into what the business needs. Right? What's happening with your financial cycles? I mean, things pivot, and yeah, that platform thing we're going to do, we're going to throttle that back a little bit because a third of you are all going home now. Right? There's so many different aspects and so many different elements to it. Bryan, Mr. Chambers, what has been the most difficult part for you in your role as enterprise architect, in your role in rolling out platform and getting people to adopt it and tying it all in? Like, if you look back over the last 18 months, where's the one thing where you're like, damn, that was hard?
That's a great question. It'll take me a second to think about that big of a time period. One thing I'll say is I think what you just acknowledged coming into that is that the technology is really only one part of doing DevOps well, right? There's a whole bunch of other pieces that have to happen for it to really work. It's not just about having the platform or having the right tools or any of those kinds of things. I think one of the big ingredients in that is probably culture. And I don't mean just culture like the company's culture, which is like one thing that, it probably trickles down. Like we have a culture where we like value kindness very highly. Not nice, that does happen sometimes, but really it's about kindness, treating people with kindness and respect. So that should trickle down. We shouldn't throw that out. But as you go down through the organization, like there's going to be a little bit, different cultures on different teams and in different areas. But what's the culture of a delivery organization actually look like? Does it value and strive for excellence? Does it want to force multiply? Does it want to have focus? All that kind of stuff. And obviously changing culture or building culture or applying culture, whatever you want to call it, deals with people, which is the most difficult thing that we do. The software does what we tell it to every single time. The people don't. It's just
what?
What? Yeah, I know.
Are you
I know
saying
you guys-
people are the hard part?
Yeah.
You said something that really resonates, where it's kindness, not being nice. And the reason that resonates is there's another organization that I talked to where their culture was about being nice, but the problem was that meant that nobody would ever criticize anything. That they would never say, hey, this, you might be able to do it better this way, because they're being nice instead of kind. And I think that's a very good distinction to make. One of those leads to better outcomes.
And one of them leads to trustworthiness, right? You don't actually automatically get trust. You exude trustworthiness in the ways in what you are doing for other people, what they anticipate your expectations are and your intentions are. Nice doesn't cut it. Kindness, right, may mean, hey, I got to take you aside. The way you guys are doing this, let's approach this a different way. It's not just, oh, that was great, attaboy.
Yeah.
Although I got to tell you, I thought culture was just, everybody's got to have a beard. Yes, I guess I'm not in the club. And we all wear floral shirts on Fridays.
Yeah, well, that's great too. Yeah, I think if you want an idea meritocracy in your organization, if you want the best ideas to win, nice isn't going to work, but I think kindness absolutely can and should.
No, I agree. That's a good distinction to make. Although I did have somebody this week who was telling me that cultural fit was a dog whistle for ageism and sexism. But I will say that after some back and forth, it's probably just, yes, because he's my age and a white male is not why he's not a good cultural fit for many organizations.
So wait a minute, Bryan, you said a couple of back and forths. What you really mean is that you verbally pummeled this person into submission, and now they're going to be kind.
So pro tip, if you ask me a question and I respond with a fact and then you then attack me, you're gonna have a bad time.
Okay. Well, so noted. And you guys are a hoot. Bryan Chambers, we're coming to the end of our hour together. I am so glad to have met you. I know we've been chatting online with one another, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. Before we go, is there one last thing that you just want to get out there for people to think about or to know?
Ooh, you caught me off guard.
Well, let me ask Finster then, and I'll come back to you. Just
ask him and let me
quick
think
mute.
about it.
You can take some notes.
Yeah,
Finster,
totally.
what do you want people to walk away with tonight?
Don't just throw solutions at problems you don't understand. Really dig in, understand what the real problems are. And if you're building out a platform strategy, focus on the things that impact people in small ways every single day. Not like, hey, you know what, we want a new hire to be up and running and be able to code within one day. Okay, but how often do you onboard people? What about the people that have these tiny little things that impact them all the time, that you could change one thing, it would reduce the amount of time that they spent by 5 minutes across your entire organization? Right? I mean, start small, grow, give, and make it easier for people incrementally. You can't do DevOps with big bang change, because that's not how it works.
Thank you, Mr. Finster. I gotta say, I agree. And that doesn't happen very often, Mr. Chambers. I don't agree with him very often. So I gave you some think time there, Chambers. I gave you some think time. What's your takeaway for everybody? What do you want them to walk away with?
I think I'm going to stick on the culture side and say that I think if you want to do anything well, a good place to start is to be able to assume the best about the people around you. And I don't know that we are always great at doing that in life or in work. So, an architect, like maybe you don't like that title, but maybe they're here to help. Or a software engineer who has a different idea about how they want to solve a problem, maybe doesn't want to use a platform. Maybe they have a legitimately good idea and so listen to them. But like assuming that people can produce good things no matter where they are and assuming the best about their intentions, I think is the path to getting better things done. It will remove probably a lot of the conflict, not all of the conflicts, but hopefully it leaves the good conflict, the ones that are about kindness and not niceness. And you can ultimately, get to a good place, whether it's building a platform or not. I think just assume the best about people's intentions and go from there.
I love that. I have a team right now, and we have an internal motto because there's so many outside organizations that are touching up against us, and some of it is crunchy. Our little internal motto is assume noble intent. When somebody comes at us, try and take a step back. Some folks are coming at you a mile a minute, and their intensity is not that they're negative. Their intensity is that there's something else going on, that they have pressure on them. So I love what you said. Assume
Intensity can be
noble
passionate.
intent. Yep.
Well,
Yes.
and you know, something I keep telling people, right, and I've internalized is don't tie your ego to being correct, tie your ego to the correct solution.
Mm.
I like that. So we just had a round of amazingness. Are going to keep our egos in check. We're going to actually care about other people. And it's not about being nice. It's about kindness. Assume noble intent. Guys, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And if you like this content, if you'd like to hear more, please hit like, subscribe. Also, go ahead and hit us up. We have a Gmail account that we'll put in the links below. If you have topics that you're interested in or somebody that you really want us to, well, spar with, let us know. Thank you, everybody.